For larger cuts, you use the same rolling motion and hand positioning as you do for smaller cuts. The only difference is that it's not necessary for the blade to rest against the guide knuckle. Of course, it is still crucial that you keep your fingers tucked under to protect them from injury. Although the rolling technique is most commonly used, there are times when the blade will actually need to leave the board, like when using an up and down cutting motion. This technique is often used with larger food items, where the rolling technique becomes more difficult because of the height of the food. The up and down technique has three main differences from the rolling technique. First of all, it's not a circular cutting motion, so you won't need to bend your wrist as much. Secondly, it uses the center of the blade rather than the sweet spot. Lastly, the knife blade is not anchored by being in constant contact with the cutting board. Instead, the knife is anchored against your guide knuckle like this. You will lose contact between the knife and your knuckle on the downward motion, and reset it again at the beginning of each cut. You may need to use a back and forth motion on the downward cut to help the blade slice through the food. The pivot chopping technique is a variation of up and down chopping and is commonly used for chopping things like herbs. Here you anchor the tip in place with your fingers, then rotate the knife as you chop, using the tip as a pivot point. Note that both your hands are completely out of harm's way with this technique, making it safe and easy to chop very quickly. There are also times where you will use the tip of the chef's knife, like when dividing a long vegetable. First anchor the product, then insert the knife tip with the blade pointing away from your anchor hand, and drag to make the cut. You will also find the tip useful for smaller tasks like cutting the ends and stems off ingredients before chopping. In the next lesson, you'll learn how to safely combine all of these knife techniques to create professional-looking cuts.